And we're live. It is Tuesday, April 13th, 2021, the day before I get my second shot. It is 5:03 p.m. It is a beautiful sunny day in Washington after not being a beautiful sunny day in Washington. And I want to say that I invited Jonathan V. Last. What is the V for? Victor. It's got to be Victor. Because it's not Vincent. I invited JVL on the show to, kind of figure out what we could do about this internecine podcast tension that we have going on. But he's just not available, and that's one of those things that happens sometimes when you invite somebody on the show an hour and a half before the show on Twitter. But I'm going to interpret it as a unwillingness to face me man to man in our squabble over the attentions of one Sarah Longwell.
I texted him and I said exactly that. I said it's when he said he was sorry he couldn't make it. I said, it's cool. We'll make jokes about your unwillingness to face Ben directly. He said, I don't know how to respond to that, but I'm sure it's fine.
Well, I just want to say I have really tried to be above the fray in this dispute.
I have followed this guy on Twitter. I haven't even followed this.
It's not on.
I'd enjoy it.
It's not on Twitter.
It's all in Bulwark.
It's all in the Bulwark podcasts and live streams. And Jonathan is offended because for many months now, he has been introducing Sarah Longwell as his best friend. Oh. And then Sarah asked him to do, he asked her to hike the Appalachian Trail with him, by which he meant hike he meant hike the Appalachian Trail. And and she asked him to do a French Village podcast with her. And they both rejected one another's proposals. And so I agreed. I would, by the way, hike the Appalachian Trail with JVL.
You would?
Sure. I love hiking the Appalachian Trail. But he did not ask me. Sarah did ask me to record the French Village podcast with her. And I said, sure. And JVL has been having a hissy fit on these podcasts ever since. These have included threats to my life and well-being.
How could he get away with that in the modern Twitter age? Where
it's because everybody knows he's joking, we think. And poor Sarah has been caught in the middle of this. And
you know how it is, Kate. Just a couple of guys fighting over here.
I know. It's like the only thing you didn't want in your entire life, Sarah. Also, Sarah, you've got some sweet Republican mom hair happening right now. And it's you've got the little dipsy do. You're gonna run. I think my mom had that haircut from 1992 to 1998, for sure.
Yeah, I just went to get a haircut and the woman was a different person and she was like, so what do you do with your hair? And I was like, whatever the last person did. And she was like, so conventional bob. And I was like, sure. Yeah, I don't have an opinion. It'll grow out soon enough anyway.
Anyway.
Can you guys all hear me okay? Because there were some complaints in the chat, so I put in my headphones.
I am going to make a slight adjustment to see if I can improve the sound slightly, but we can hear you fine.
I'm very jealous of everyone's drinks right now.
How about now? Talk now?
How about now?
Oh, that's quieter.
Quieter.
I'm going to back off.
You made it worse.
Oh. All right. To everybody who is complaining about Sarah's volume, deal with it. Deal with it. All right. I just want to say that is a long-winded way of saying. Sorry, go ahead.
Wow. Why did you make it worse, Ben?
Yeah, so now I'm on a delay.
Refresh.
What's happened, but
Yeah, you are super quiet now.
Why? It was so good. You fucked it all up, Ben.
I fucked it up. Well, we're going to deal with it. We're not allowed to have fun anymore. We're not allowed to have Sarah Longwell sound like herself, which is to say loud and boisterous. But we are allowed to have her back on the podcast or on the whatever this is, the live stream. Sarah, it's good to see you again.
Mime something to us, Sarah.
It's good to see you, but
You have to fix this. No.
All right.
It's gotten so much worse that.
All right, we're getting rid of you, and we're going to bring you back.
Yeah.
Um,
In the meantime, I'll talk about how I just taught Easements in.
all right,
and-
let's see if.
No, you don't want to talk about that, Ben?
No, I was going to say, let's see if Kate can make Easements interesting.
Oh yeah. So you want to know the story that I tell?
Yeah.
The story about like there was a forest. Hi, can you hear
Is that better, Sarah?
It's better for me.
No. Terrible.
You're still super quiet. So switch your microphone off your.
I'm gonna buy you a headset, Sarah.
I have a headset, guys. I do podcasts every day, all day. It is only with you guys that I have a problem.
I feel so special and honored.
click on the gear on your controls on your screen and switch the input to your mic. I think we're getting you through your computer audio, your computer internal mic on your computer now.
I think that we're getting you through your shoe, like get smart or something. That's how far away you sound. Hey Ben, look what I found in my desk drawer.
Now you're silent altogether, and we're going to have to bring you back. What did you find?
Gushers.
Oh.
I haven't eaten anything today, and I'm like on hour 4 of teaching, so.
You're eating Gushers?
I don't have food. I don't have any other food. It's not a fully functioning law school at the moment.
Can we hear you now?
I don't know. Can you?
Yeah.
Now you sound great.
So okay, this is literally what I started out doing. So fine, guys.
You didn't see us complaining at the beginning.
No,
Never listen to the Greek chorus. They're just there. Like if it were up to them, you'd put out your eyes because like they just taunt you.
True.
All right, easements.
Oh, yeah. I just taught easements. I can show you my lecture. I know that sounds really exciting to people, but no. The example I give in class, there are 2 types of, well, not just 2, but there's 2 main types of positive easements. Easements appertinent and easements in gross. And an easement appertinent is like on the land. So it is like, Sarah, I give you this strip of land of like 2 feet on the side of my thing to walk through my property to your property or to get to like a road or something like that. And those run with the land. The burden is on the land and the land that happens. And so you can do this. So, but there's also easements in gross, which are easements when you give a specific person a right to do something. And so the example that I use for this is when I was a kid, my neighborhood, my little like residential kind of neighborhood backed up to a forest, like a big park with like frogs and creeks. And this was catnip for tiny KK. And I like wanted to go and I had to go to a main road and get someone to drive me to the park if I wanted to go. But then I figured out that my neighborhood abutted it, like the backs of a whole group of houses abutted it, and I could cut through their like cross their land to get to like the park. And conveniently for me, my dentist was happened to live in one of these things. So I went up to Dr. Rosenthal and I said, Dr. Rosenthal, can I cut through your land in order to get to the park? And there was like no specific land easement. It was just like, he was just like allowing me to do it. This would be an easement in gross. I didn't know that when I was like 8, but he was like, yes. And then he moved away. And so the question that I asked my students is like, whether or not the easement still exists and you can transfer it, or whether the transfer of land kills the easement.
Meanwhile, I like this conversation because instead of people complaining about Sarah and my French pronunciation, they are now complaining about Kate's French pronunciation, even though Kate actually speaks French, which neither Sarah nor I does.
I've never known how to pronounce this word, and I choose not to care. Like so many things in like the law, when people say amici or amiki or like amicus or amicuses or like they fuck it all up, I just like, I don't know. It really it makes me crazy. And every time I try to pronounce it, I talk myself out of the right way to pronounce it before I say it out loud in my own head. And so I just gave up trying. How do you say it? Can someone type it into the chat? Is Eve freaking out that I said it? Is Ev freaking out that I said it wrong?
I don't know. Ev doesn't freak out when people get French pronunciation wrong. So, Sarah, I have a serious question for you, which we have not talked about on the French Village podcast. And Kate has been texting frantically about the French Village for weeks.
You're just like ignoring me. You're like, no, I refuse. I already do something.
So here's my question. Is it better or worse the second time you have watched the French Village? Because we have the big difference between us in the French Village podcast is that you've seen it all before and I haven't. Are you enjoying it as much the second time?
I'm enjoying it differently. I don't think it's a better or worse thing. So the first time I obviously watched it, I didn't know what was going to happen. And so I just watched it with my wife. And it was like, the main thing, you know, when you're eating something really good and you're just like really glad that there's a lot of it. Like, you know, like if you're like, oh, this is like such a good thing I'm tasting. I'm glad the bag is big. It's the inverse of that old joke about like, you know, this food is terrible and the portions are so small. It's the other side of that where it's this food is so good. And so like the thing about the French Village is that I was just enjoying it so much. And I was just always so glad there were so many episodes because I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad there's so many more seasons because I like this so much. I don't ever want it to end. This time, obviously,
that's the way the French, by the way, felt about the occupation. They were like, it's going to be such great television. If only it could go on for more than 4 years.
I have been obsessed with y'all's podcast. I mean, that's because I like both of you a whole lot, but also, and it feels like hanging out with friends. And like all of the things that I'm thinking about and just like are bouncing around my head as I listen to you. And then like after watching it, I'm like, yes. Oh, I didn't know that. Or like, I mean, it's just amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you like it. We've been getting great feedback. I'm glad so many people watch the show. And so far there's not too many people who've told me that they're like mad at me because I, you know, made them watch this French show that they hate. Like most people are really into it. And yeah, so I'm the thing that I like about it this time is that I am watching it for things that like just washed over me the first time. But that I like, if they weren't essential to the plot, I didn't pay that much attention to them. But now, because I know I'm going to get to go into an episode with Ben and be like, tell me why the communists and socialists, like what is going on with them? And I know he's going to have an answer. I spend a lot more time rather than just letting it wash over me thinking like, okay, I want to talk about this because I want to understand why this has an impact. I
have learned so much history. I've learned so much history from Ben, listening to Ben. And like, I get a lot out of kind of cultural moment, like movies or TV shows or books, like reading me into a narrative or a political perspective or like an emotional perspective of like being in this thing. And then like it changes all of the motivations of history. Like it just it makes history so much more real. And even you like with Ben, like obviously this is a fictional story about this French village. But Ben's kind of like insight about like all of the historical things takes stuff that I swear to God I would have just like glazed over, like if I was reading about it on Wikipedia. And it like gives human, like every person becomes kind of a human embodiment of like those various moments of politics and complications. And so it just, but you know, I would never have had the insight to realize that. And so like it's fascinating.
So the I cannot tell whether, and to do this, we would have to actually have somebody on who's been through the French school system or French university, and whether the level of historical detail in this is just what a French viewer will expect, because this is a period of French history that is, it's called in France the Dark Years, and it's a period that is obsessively studied. I don't think there's a more intensely studied period of French history ever. And every generation since the war has really, really spent energy on this period. And so I think there is like, some of it may just be that French audiences for which this was made really do expect a certain level of accuracy and detail. But some of it, I think, is that the producers of this show were obsessive about getting things right. There's a lot of history in this, and it's as best as I can tell, and I'm not, an expert on this period, but nothing in it has seemed wrong to me. When they talk about, like, I know the political divisions reasonably well, and when they talk about them, they get them right. And so, for example, in the first couple episodes, I pointed out on the podcast that it had accurately described the Communist Party's position prior to the Soviet invasion, to the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union. The new season, which I watched the first episode of last night, takes place 3 months after the Operation Barbarossa begins. And the communists and socialists are sitting around together, planning operations together, because as soon as, because the Communist Party switched positions the moment Russia was invaded, they get a lot of things like that right, and it's a good it's really
good. It's a good show.
I cannot think of an American show that spends the kind of energy on historical detail that this show does.
Maybe like Mad Men, but like that's an easier lift.
Yeah, but Deadwood, I don't know. Like, maybe you don't like, but Deadwood is actually pretty good. I know that's like, had a short run, but like that's one of my favorite. I love Deadwood, but yeah, I don't know. But The Wire season 2. I mean,
but they're not describing political events as densely complicated as this. I mean, Mad Men has a lot of social history in it. I've actually never watched Mad Men, but it's not like, it is not trying to explain a complicated period of American political history in detail, or portray it in detail, at least not that I know of. So I don't know. I'm very impressed by it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
No, I'm just glad you guys like it, because I would have felt really bad if we were like somehow locked ourselves into 8 seasons of podcasting, and you were like, God, I hate this show. Why'd you make me watch it?
So I think if that had happened, Sarah, I would drop out.
Yeah, fair.
I'd be like, Jonathan Last, you win. Take her.
Fair, because there are periods of time where I'm like, why am I doing this? And then I was like, oh, this is my idea. Like, I know how many episodes there are. I don't know what I was thinking. It's like, I don't have time for another podcast. You don't have time for another podcast. But I will say, I look forward to it the most of all the things I'm doing right now, because it's really fun to do.
Isn't that like a really interesting thing when you're so overbooked? Like the things you end up like looking forward to. Like there's so many panels that I'm just like, and then like I show up and there's a bunch of people that I really like, and I'm like, I still look forward to this every day. Like, this is still really nice. Although, Sarah, I'm a little pissed at you because you did not hold my hand in any way through the episode that caused me great trauma. And like, basically, so Wait, am I not allowed to talk about this because no
No,
spoilers?
you're allowed to talk about it because it's in season 1, and we're done with season 1.
Yeah. So there was an episode in which I was like digging through this, like the podcast. I was kind of like a podcast. I was watching the show, and as you know, like Nina had been sick for like my dog had been sick for like 3 months. I was completely overbooked. I had not been sleeping. I was like a little emotionally fragile. So maybe Nazi France is not the best thing to spend my emotional time on. But I got to the episode with Gustav and Captain Carrot and that last scene. Well, like, first of all, it's like he just scoops up the rabbit and is just like, we'll get through it. And I'm just was like, holy, like just like a river of tears. And then the last scene, like the juxtaposition of like the meat on the counter and the rabbit coming into focus in the cage. And don't tell me what happens to the rabbit. I don't think I'm ever going to watch again, because I think that now I know the Captain Carrot is okay and he'll be okay forever in my mind. And like,
notice how Kate zeroes in on the core issue in the Nazi occupation of France, which is rabbit welfare.
Yeah. Right. But this is exactly, and like I knew, I was talking to Ev about this. We were texting, and I was like, she was like, I don't like how the director manipulates us so directly, like to like force us into these dichotomies of choosing, not feeling bad that like this Jewish boy is killed in the woods, or feeling bad, but like you still feel worse about like this rabbit. And I'm like, I kind of hate myself. Like that's the other big part. It was like, I'm like, I know this is a terrible choice to make, but I feel so like, I know this is not right, but like, I felt really bad.
Well, I happen to have Eve right here. Hey. And she also has complaints about the scripting, but less, at least in my text feed, about Captain Carrot, and more about
I was advised about Captain Carrot. That was put, so I knew it would happen. So it was perfect. Yeah.
But more about Lucienne.
Yeah, you really don't like Lucienne.
No. No. Well, she's jumping into the mouth of the wolf, and she's completely dumb, and she's so unique. Like she has only one. She exists only to be hit on by dudes. It's the only reason why she's there. No.
Well,
how far
she plays the violin, but only just to fall in love with the German guy. And I don't know.
Where are you in the show?
What?
Where are you in the show? Like what episode?
I started I've started season 2. I think I'm in episode 4.
Okay. I mean,
yeah. Well, I
understand. I think your point is, I think you're right. But I just, with 8 seasons, you got to give these guys some time to breathe. And I think that we should at the end, we can really evaluate all of these characters in total. Because I agree with you so far. That's what we've seen of Lucienne. And maybe that's all we'll see. But you wait and see. We'll see how we feel at the end.
You're bad at no spoilers, Sarah. You're like, I noticed this too. There was like this interesting kind of, it was like watching you do your focus groups, like to like listen to you, like talk to Ben, you like try as neutrally as possible, knowing what's going to happen, or like what should happen. And you just kind of state something and you're like, so what did you think of that? And then you just let Ben like kind of give his opinion. You're like, oh really? I don't know that I agree with that. I'm like, interesting.
So let's talk about things other than the French Village.
Yeah, sorry.
How are you feeling about politics and life these days, Sarah?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll be honest with you, since we're on this show, that I spent all day researching blood clots because I am a woman between 18 and 48 who received the Johnson & Johnson vaccine within the last couple of weeks. And I've been trying all day to figure out how I feel about the FDA making this change. Because, right now everybody is worried about whether or not putting the Johnson & Johnson vaccine on pause, whether or not that is going to, hurt, whether it's going to increase vaccine hesitancy or even anti-vaccine sentiment, forgetting that actually it also is going to cause people to freak out who are in the demographic that this is happening to, who've received the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So mainly I've been trying to figure that out today. But it did cause me to think a lot about, I've been saying about the focus groups that there's a fair number of people, I come across a lot of people who say they're not going to get the vaccine. But it has caused me to think a lot about the difference between vaccine hesitancy and anti-vaxxing, because they are actually two totally different phenomena. And one is, I think, actually pretty legitimate, right? Like a lot of times something that people say is, I don't know, this happened really fast and I'm not sure it's been studied enough. And like, I might get it eventually, but I'm not going to get it right away. And I don't think that's like, if I'm being completely honest, there was definitely a, before I even went in, I was like, this did happen fast. And I'm like a big believer in vaccines. I really wanted it. I got it as soon as I was able. I signed up every place I could. I got called by the DC lottery and I was very excited. But I will say that, like, there's this part of me when this news comes out today that says, boy, I hope in 10 years, it like freaked me out a little bit. I'm just telling you for real how I felt about the fact that it freaked me out a little bit.
So are you, would you consider yourself now hesitant to get the J&J vaccine, or would you say, hey, 6 and 6.8 million is a complication rate that I can handle with equanimity?
It is the latter. I don't think that this was handled particularly well, though, because I think that it was the news that dropped was just, this is being pulled because of this particular problem. It's a similar problem that they've been seeing in another, in the AstraZeneca vaccine. And so, I don't think that it's, and so as the day went on, people started doing more contextualizing, like, this is how many blood clots, you get it from taking birth control pills, or, from smoking, or for this, whatever other things that you can start to contextualize. But it is, I think somebody said this in the chat, and I think it's right. Like, it's human nature to some degree when you're like, wait, women 18 to 48 who got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine within the last 2 weeks, that's me. And to say, I feel nervous about that. And in a way that is not, my brain can contextualize it. And I read a lot. And I think, politically, I can say, boy, I wish that they had given more context to this up front. I do worry about it creating, Tucker Carlson's next storyline about how they're trying to hide things from us and how this is so bad. So I worry about that too. But it is just human nature, I think, to say, to worry about these things.
It's Josh Sharfstein talked about this, right? Like, this was like kind of the idea of like identifying things and trying to assess risk assessments. And when you publicly state something, you draw attention to it. And then people have like different biases for risk assessment and different heuristics for risk assessment. And it becomes very like some of them are really, it's hard to slow think your way out of exactly what you described, which is that, oh my God, that's me. That's exactly, and the CDC just changed its mind. And like, I am a rational, very like smart thinking individual, but it's the CDC. I tell all these other people to listen to the CDC. Why wouldn't I be worried?
I mean, I have to say, though, my reaction to this was a little bit different. I know more than 6 women between the ages of 18 and 48 who have had blood clots without getting the J&J vaccine. And I remain confused as to what the null hypothesis is here. I mean, if you take 6.8 million women between the ages of 18 and 48, and you count the number of blood clots that they've had in the last, in the 2 weeks following any particular day, there's going to be a certain number of blood clots. The number is not going to be zero. And I guess I'm a little bit perplexed as to why the CDC, and look, there are very serious scientists at the CDC. This is not and FDA as well. This is presumably not a scientific artifact. They're responding to something. But the number 6 out of 6.8 million strikes me as so vanishingly small that I'm not sure I understand why we are assuming these are adverse events at all.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that's right. And maybe I'm not entirely sure. I think, look, they're going to pause it and study it. I think it would be one thing if we didn't have an alternative. I will say I had the choice of which one I got. And if I had known this, right, I chose Johnson & Johnson because I was like, it's the one actually, I actually kind of thought about it and thought, it's only one shot. I like that. I knew it was slightly lower in its efficacy, but they were all pretty effective. But if I had known this, I would have gotten a different one. Like I would have. And so I think having that information is important. Anyway, yeah, I wanted one and done.
So we have a bunch of questions for you about focus groups. Esther, the floor is yours.
Hi. I wonder, hey, Kate, I wonder if you have done much work with your focus groups on concepts of or attitudes towards democracy. And I ask because within conversations that I might have, we're often talking about pro-democracy versus anti-democracy forces. And I have the real sense that the average person who's not keeping up with current events and politics really doesn't think about that issue at all, or at least not in that way. So how do you get at that, and what are you finding out?
Yeah, that's such a great question / observation, and it's true. People don't think about democracy the way that we do in these forums. I'm in a lot of groups that are focused on democracy. I run a group that's got democracy in its name. Average voters do not think about things in terms of democracy. And as a concept, it's not that it's not important. It would be important to them if you brought up democracy and asked them specific questions about democracy, but it never, ever comes up in any way unprompted. Now, certain tenets of liberal democracy come up that are important to people. So, for example, I'm doing a bunch of focus groups recently in Georgia, and I've been asking them about how they feel about the elected officials who objected to the election. Specifically, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, because she's from Georgia, who said things prior to the election, or prior to the insurrection, just a day before, actually, that we can't have a peaceful transition of power. We cannot have a peaceful transition of power because this election has been stolen from Donald Trump. And people say things, their responses to that are things like, well, that's her freedom of speech. And even on the objections, they say things like, well, that's their right. It's not illegal. And they very much isolate and blame the people who stormed the Capitol specifically for their behavior. And they do not hold Donald Trump or Marjorie Taylor Greene or Josh Hawley or any of the elected officials who lied to them about the election accountable for it. So when I think about messaging, it's funny, I actually did a series of focus groups at some point around democracy reforms and different sort of institutional reforms that can be made. And when you even just tell people like democracy reform as a concept, they think it means reform for Democrats. Like they hear democracy and they hear Democrat. And so, yeah, big picture democracy, not on the tips of the tongues of your average voter.
Tom McGuckin.
Hi, guys. Hey, I wanted to show a new toy I got. Try that as a camera, guys. Okay, it's not on an iPhone, but it really does take good pictures. The only trouble is, with a camera that weighs 2.5 pounds, you have to have a plan. Okay, you just don't haul it around in your pocket and snap everything. Sarah, as I said, you're the guardian of democracy. I've always been your great admirer. Here's what I want to know. I didn't get it, but a lot of people got $1,400 in their bank account. And what I want to know is, what did they think of it? Did they think of it, in economics we use a term called manna from heaven? Okay, it's floating down, it just came down out of nowhere. Or two, what was that it is an entitlement that gonna keep on going? Or three, was an accounting error, which is what I deal with all the time. So what is your focus group? Have you asked them about the $1,400 or not?
I have, and I will tell you, there's different. First of all, I love that guy when he's on.
He's the best. And
he's amazing.
He's got the liquor in the background. He's always got something for show and tell. Tom McGuckin's the best.
Bottles of wine. He's amazing.
Tell that guy we should hang. Yeah, so it's interesting. So it depends. It depends. The reactions to people have been different. So I've been doing a lot of different groups. So if you recall, prior to the election, I focused primarily on Trump 2016 voters who rated him as doing a very bad or somewhat bad job, because I was looking for the slice of persuadable voters and was thinking about how you could persuade them to vote for Joe Biden. So I'm talking to lots of different groups now. So I'm talking to a bunch of groups of Trump voters or Marjorie Taylor Greene voters, Trump 2020 voters, but I've also been talking to Trump 2016 voters who voted for Biden in 2020. So the swing voters really who decided the election. And like, they're completely different types of people. So the Biden 2020 voters, even though they voted for Trump in 2016, they are, you may recall from when I did a mock focus group here on the show, that my first question is always, how do you think things are going in the country? And the most common answer to how do you think things are going in the country is verbatim, shit show. Like, that is all I got in 2020. And people really thought things were going poorly. The first group that answered that in a majority optimistic way was the 2016 Trump, 2020 Biden voters, who feel like maybe things are turning around. And the people who voted for Biden tend to be much more both aware of and happy about the $1,400 checks. Now, there is a real sense, though, among all of the voters that it is that you have to pay for it. Like, they're all aware, like, this is a trade-off. I want to know where this money's coming from. People are aware of that. The Trump voters, the Trump 2020
they're not wrong.
They're not wrong. They're not wrong. I'm just saying people have an intuitive sense, or even have something to back it up sometimes, where they say, well, it's $1,400, but how much is it going to cost the country to pay for all of these things? I'll tell you, the Trump voters are even more likely to talk about it that way, where they think like, and I had one woman that stuck out to me, and I've thought about her answer since, where she was actually quite angry about who got the money. So she was saying, I'm on a fixed income, I'm on disability, I need $1,400 really bad. I need more than that. So why are people who make $70,000 getting these $1,400 checks? And like, she was much less focused on what she got and much more focused on what other people were getting that she thought were undeserving of the money. And I would say that's not an uncommon type of response, where people tend to focus a little bit less on what they get and more about what they're angry about other people getting.
Andrew McCurdy, the floor is yours.
Hi. So I think this is my first time since you guys had the anniversary. So congrats. This thing has been a lifesaver for the past year. So Sarah, you've talked about how there are different segments of the Republican Party before, and I'm curious, what percentage do you think are actual diehard supporters, the kind of white nationalists, alt-right, Q supporters, and what percent are just kind of casual conservative, business conservatives who kind of pay attention to politics, but constantly hear from friends about how great Trump is and that forms their perception? And then what percent of that needs to change for reasonable Republicans to regain control of the party? Thank you.
Well, it's, great question. It's the kind of thing I think about all the time. It's not, I don't know how precise. Somebody put out kind of a pie chart not that long ago that had kind of the never Trump at 10%, the move on from Trump at like 15%, and then like I'm going to get the numbers wrong, so maybe I shouldn't put them out here, but like this exists, this kind of breakdown where, and it was funny because I remember they had the QAnon conspiracy groups broken out from the hardcore Trumpers, and together they equaled more or less a majority of Republican voters. I think between never Trumpers and the move on from Trump, we got close to 30% maybe. And so you could think that the party is pretty fully Trump's. The other thing that I'll tell you that I don't hear people talk about as much, but that strikes me as relevant is that it's not the percentage in that bar chart or in that chart is interesting, but like Trump found 10 million more votes between 2016 and 2020. Like 10 million more people. I thought after 2016 that he must have kind of capped out at what that guy could find. And I knew turnout was going to be high on both sides, but it is the reason that Republicans are not in any way rethinking their strategy is that they can't believe that 74 million people voted for them. And it actually had good benefits for them down ticket. And so they want to keep all those people engaged and interested. And the crux of your question is really like, can the party be saved, or is it fully in the grip of people who are hardcore kind of MAGA? And the answer is the party cannot be saved in the immediate term. It is in the grip of hardcore MAGA. We are going to go through a couple cycles where we are going to have to continue to fight tooth and nail against that influence. And hopefully, 10 years from now, as you see a lot of demographic change and sort of the Republicans tend to be on the older side. I think once there's sort of some turnover in the voting population, we're going to have to keep making the case for liberal democracy and for sanity and a bunch of other things, so that ultimately we can get the Republican Party back. But it's going to take cycles, many cycles, years. It is not something that happens next year. In fact, I say this all the time on the Secret Pod, but through redistricting alone, I'm not sure Republicans can't take back the House, just mathematically. And so I think in the short term, we've still got we're still fighting as hard as we were 2 years ago.
It's not really redistricting that's going to cause that. It's reapportionment, right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, they're going to redraw the lines. Yeah.
But the big issue is not that they're going to be able to gerrymander stuff that they weren't able to. It's actually that the states that they have control over the districting process are going to gain more representatives. Alice Lee, the floor is yours.
Hi, Kate. So I find the argument that a lot of this craziness comes from small dollar donors really convincing. And I'm wondering if you have any theories about why Democrats, based on things like HR1, seem to not have caught on to that. And do you think?
Oh my God, this is such a good question and a smart thing. And I think that because I say it all the time, this is one of my big frustrations right now. Is like HR1, and I'm like, HR1 looks like it was written in 1996. Like it is like attacking a problem around donor dollars that is not an issue right now. Like literally the Republican Party right now is going like this to corporate America and saying, you can't control me. You know why? Because small dollar donations are where it's at. Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to outraise everybody with $3.2 million. Josh Hawley, he doesn't care about his donors walking away because he just raised $3 million from 57,000 people who love the fact that he puts his fist in the air and gets an insurrection going. And the incentives are all running in a new direction. They are running in the direction of being loud, being crazy, being canceled, having grievance, and being able to say, they're coming for me and I represent you. I fight for you. I'm standing. Matt Gaetz is out there saying like this phrase right now, I stand between you and the establishment, the corporate media. Like I'm like seeing tweets today where it's like corporations are going to cancel you people, and I'm like, that's not a thing. Like these corporations, they need you to buy Coca-Cola. They don't want to cancel you. They are not going to donate to people. You know, they're trying to use their clout to say they're not going to donate to people who are against, you know, liberal democracy. But anyway, the point is, you're just completely right, and this is a real thing that I feel like Democrats. I don't understand HR1. I think that the attack on voting rights is the number one threat that the country faces at the moment, and that it should be treated as such. And there shouldn't be an 800-page bill that brings in all kinds of stuff like how financing elections and all the corruption stuff, and like an 800-page wish list that was put together by progressives. We have to do the voting thing. Like, I want to see a 60-page bill on expanding voting rights and holding off Republicans from doing things like just saying, hey, just no matter how they vote in our state, we're going to send whatever electors we want. Like, it is active. It is, there's actually dangerous things happening on voting, and we should act accordingly and not worry about like campaign finance reform that solves the problems of 1998.
Speaking of 1996 and Josh Hawley, you know what happened in 1996?
Josh Hawley graduated from high school?
No, Section 230. Sorry.
Oh,
just
Josh Hawley may have graduated from middle school. Alice, you wanted to follow up?
Yeah. Why do you think that's the case? Because like, why are they not talking to you or like anyone who's noticed this? Or is it did they realize it and like think corporate money is a good talking point? Like, what gives?
You know, you are right that everybody should talk to me. And that listen to
Why
me.
doesn't everyone talk to you, Sarah?
Why don't they? I don't understand. You know, here's why. I think that HR1 got put together by a whole bunch of progressive groups at a table, and they all got their licks in, and that's fine. That's the way some things get done. I think that if they had a 60 vote majority in the Senate, then they could pass HR1. But like, Joe Manchin has been very clear. He is not blowing up the filibuster. So, and I do talk to people, and I say to anyone who will listen, anything that's going to get passed that you can't push through reconciliation, you got to start with Manchin, Murkowski, Collins, Romney, Sinema. Like, they should be the new squad. There needs to be a center squad, and the center squad they're the only people who can save democracy. And like, you're gonna have to be like, what is your compromise on voter ID? You know, for all the freaking out about Georgia, the last 4 digits of a social security number sounds like a good compromise on voter ID to me. And like, you're gonna need to start there. You cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good, or let the tail wag the dog. You need Republican votes on this, so you gotta think differently about your strategy.
Mr. Nelson.
Thank you.
Whoa, that's awesome.
No, it's not.
I think that is probably coming through Sarah's line. So let's mute Sarah and see if we can get you to be able to answer the question, pose your question, except you vanished. All right. We are working on bringing,
I'm sorry. It was,
there we go.
We had 2 windows open and.
Whoops. And now he vanished again. Nelson, Michael Nelson, let's bring him back. We're trying this again, people.
There we go.
Sorry.
All right.
And I
Take
do
3
stuff for a living. Quick question. In the last 5 days, we've had Donald Trump, the other guy, go after Mitch McConnell and then attack Georgia Governor Kemp. Who's next? I mean, and why is Trump doing this? Is this for money, power, publicity, all of the above?
You have to unmute her, Ben. Oh, there she goes.
Yeah,
just
I
did.
got it. So, I mean, I can't be the one to get inside Trump's brain in general, because it sounds like a terrible place to hang out. But look, I think Donald Trump definitely wants to be the 2024 presumptive nominee, and to do that, so like, first of all, his presidency was a grift. Everything that's happened post presidency is a grift. Like 100%, he wants to stay in the news. He wants to raise money. He wants to be thought of as the de facto 2024 nominee. And as Nikki Haley made patently clear yesterday during her press conference, he is, that they will all go and check with him before they decide whether or not they run. And if he's running, they will not run. He can absolutely clear the field. And yeah, why is he attacking people? He's attacking people because he doesn't want anybody to think that they can round up enough people to put him on the back burner, right? He's going after Mitch McConnell. And the thing is, he's bested Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, man, you're going to shoot at the king, you best not miss. And that guy, Mitch McConnell, decided to not take a real shot. He decided to take a half shot and not vote to impeach, but stand on the floor and excoriate Trump. And Trump is now going to destroy him for it. And Trump is going to make sure that everybody knows he still has that juice. And the fact that 3 months after Trump incited an insurrection, all of the donors were willing to blaze a path to Mar-a-Lago to go down there and sit there and listen to what he has to say. I don't care if they were leaking to Politico. Who cares? They showed up for that. They wanted to go there and listen, and go to Mar-a-Lago and listen to Trump. And that is disgusting, horrible, frightening. Like, choose your word. But it is a testament to where the party is, which is still completely in the thrall of Trump.
E.G. Phillips, aka Ducks with Pants.
Yes.
I know you on Twitter.
Well, yes. I hope my icon is memorable. That's the whole idea, and it's ducks with pants. Let's be very clear that these are multiple ducks with the pants
and multiple pants.
That's debatable, but obviously. The whole phrase lends itself to some flexibility. Anyway, given the lovely discussion we started off at the top of the podcast, or whatever this is or becomes, I was wondering if if Sarah and Ben would be amenable to a Lay Podcast Live edition, where you bring in people and we specifically talk about the French Village. Perhaps not at the expense of the Greek chorus members who are not following the podcast.
Yeah, you should do it at the end of every season or something.
That was my thought. An occasional, sort of summation type of thing. We can grouse about things or just talk.
What do you think, Sarah? It would be easy-ish to arrange.
Yeah, I mean, I'm skeptical of the technical capabilities that we have based on our core record here, but I'm all for it. That would actually be really fun. I would love to hear what people think.
It's actually easy to do technically. What you do is you run this, and then you simultaneously run Zencaster or Squadcast, so you get a decent recording of us, and then whatever Crowdcast can deliver for the audience questions.
I love this idea.
Let's do it.
Me too.
Let's do it.
This is a great idea.
Let's do it at the end of season 2.
Right.
Okay, great.
All right, Ducks with Pants, you will host it. No, I'm kidding. You'll play guitar.
Okay.
All right. Our last question before we have a special little moment to talk about is not Maggie Feldman Pilch, is the Reverend Dr. Hillary Livingston.
Hello. How are you guys?
How are you?
I'm good. I had my second Pfizer shot like 2 days ago, and I'm feeling a little funky, but okay.
Good.
So
I'm glad you're all back.
Thank you. A big fan of you, Sarah, and a fan of the Bulwark. So thank you for sharing with us. I'm also listening to the French Village podcast, although I'm not watching the show because I'm not going to watch a show on Nazis and stuff after surviving a pandemic, but I am enjoying the podcast.
But you're not the first person who said this to me, and I have a serious question.
Okay.
Is the podcast comprehensible without watching the show?
I think so.
Wow.
I mean, I think it's, I mean, you guys describe what's going on and you fill in the history, and Sarah brings up kind of the, you know, the human drama. So, I mean, I feel like I don't, you know.
All right.
I don't need to see the French village get taken over by the Nazis. I'm kind of with you guys. So.
And you know not to like Hortense and
yeah,
okay.
I'm so down on Hortense.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So down on her. Yeah, totally. But I'm into Captain Carrots, and I'm a fan of him. So my question along those lines is, if you could, what character would you, if you put yourself in, what character would you be in French Village and why?
Okay. Well, I can't do this entirely without spoilers, but I'm 100% Marie, and no one's allowed to tell me I'm not Marie. You know, as the show goes on, I just think, look, the reason that I'm so into French Village is because I did think that it touched on some things that I thought about a lot during the Trump years, which is, why do people make the decisions that they do? And what is it that separates people who look at what was going on and say, this is bad, and I can see that it's bad, and we should not accommodate it, we should not rationalize it, we should not excuse it. I was surrounded by people like that, and I could not see any real difference between them and the people who went along for a variety of reasons, because the incentives were the same for all of us on the Republican side. It was to go along to get along. We all had jobs or things that we did, and that gave us reason why we should just go along, and some people didn't, and lots of people did. And so I am like very interested in characters who, for reasons that you can't discern, like there's not an external motivation. It seems to just come from a place where they just look at what's happening and say, this is wrong, and I want to put things on the line for it. Like, that matters to me. And like Marie to me on the show, and so this is like kind of arrogant maybe actually, that I'll just say I want to be Marie. But I think that she is the purest person where you see it's just like a question of character. Like, she just says, I see this stuff is wrong and I want to help. I just want to help. I want to do something about it. And yeah, it's going to be risky, but it matters to me. So I'm going to do it. And like, she's not a perfect person, and she makes immoral decisions in other places in her life. But she is pretty mission oriented in as the show goes on. And I also think like finds herself as the show goes on, and in the roles that she plays. And anyway, that's who I hope. That's who I aspire to be.
Ben, who are you?
So I agree with everything that Sarah says about Marie. And I think she's in many ways the moral voice of the story. But I can't be Marie because Sarah is. And so I want to flag two other characters. Don't
steal mine.
One is Dick Cavell, who is crusty and unpleasant, and also, like Marie, just kind of snaps to attention and does the right thing. And you don't really notice it in quite the same way.
After beating a prostitute for like...
Yeah, right. You don't really notice it because he is unpleasant in other ways. He's not above abusing his power. But he does not hesitate when Jewish lives are at stake, ever. He just does it. He does not hesitate when somebody needs to step up and run an intelligence operation against Vichy. He does not shrink from hard decisions about how to protect his operation, which has a real moral component. He protects his people. And I think he starts off as an unappealing character because he's a cop for Vichy, but he becomes an increasingly appealing character the more the show goes on. The other one who I think starts as an appealing character and just stays that way the whole time is Suzanne, the socialist postal worker. And she's less noticed because she's more of a minor character, but she actually stands for something very important in the show, which is that the resistance was not the sole province of or even the principal province of an alternative totalitarian ideology. And there were, the majority of France was not communist. And there were these democratic resistance movements that operated within the parameters of the Republic that we don't really remember all that much, but they were actually motivated by things that resemble our values. And she just very cheerfully and energetically does what needs to be done, and does it without the overlay of a totalitarian ideology that Marcel is struggling with and chafing at sometimes. And I think it's elegantly portrayed. It's not heavy-handed, but she is so much more appealing than the communists who she consorts with for purposes of getting things done. So I like the two of them very much, and those are my if I had to be one.
Which one? Who do you think I am?
Oh, you're. I mean, if you're Captain Carrot, unless we restrict you to humanity, in which case you are clearly Gustav.
Yes, I'm so Gustav. I am totally Gustav.
And this brings us to our special guest, Maggie Feldman Pelch, whose birthday it is, and therefore, if it were our birthday, she would sing "Happy Birthday" to us.
I would.
Since it is her birthday, I feel obligated to sing "Happy Birthday" to her.
I'm so glad this is going to be recorded.
Happy birthday to you.
Oh, he's not bad.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Margaret Feldman Pilch. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, Maggie.
Thank you. So, Ben, does this mean we get to, can we out your previous musical experience? Because you've done one musical thing in your life that I have not yet done.
You mean that I've auditioned at the Met?
Yeah.
I have indeed auditioned at the Met.
I just find this out. 382 episodes into it.
Like, surprise! Did you rush the stage during somebody else's audition?
No, there's a funny story behind it where we are over time already, but maybe if somebody brings this up on Just Us Saturday, I will tell the story of how I came to audition at the Met. Very cool. No Richard Wattenbarger. I cannot sing Wotan, and I'm not going to try.
Thank you for singing "Happy Birthday" to me,
Maggie. It's lovely to see your face. We haven't been for a walk in a while.
I know, we got to do that.
We got to do that.
Yeah.
See you soon. Sarah Longwell, you're a great American, and it is wonderful to see your face, which I do now every Friday when we record a French Village podcast. I will point out to those of you who have answered the poll that 72% of you have not watched any of the French Village podcast, and 66% of you have not listened to the French Village podcast at all. Y'all come into the light, and
hope you're getting royalties for this, Sarah.
And join us on the Ducks with Pants hosted live episode of the French Village podcast live whenever we do it. Kate, I am getting my second vaccine shot tomorrow. I will probably be here at 5, but I reserve the right to send you a text at 4:30 that says I am illin and you're on your own tonight. So tell us about tomorrow's show.
We're going to have Jillian York on from the Electronic Frontier Foundation talking about her new book, Silicon Values. She will be calling in from Germany. It will be very late on her time. Hopefully Ben will be able to join us, but if not, maybe we'll get a guest host. Who knows?
We will be back 22 hours and 52 minutes for all of that. And until then, Sarah?
We don't have fun anymore, but we do this. What's the outro?
No, you just did it. It's whatever you say. It's we don't have fun anymore, but you have now been on the show enough that we can actually defer to you on the outro. See you tomorrow, folks.
Love it here every day. Bye, guys.